Thank you for coming to today's seminar. My name is Ho-Sung Lee, and I will, from the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council, Austria chapter. I would like to give you some basic logistics on how we will conduct this seminar. Before the opening remarks, we will have a slight pledge of allegiance to the Korean flag, which is 1 or 2 minutes. And then we will have opening remarks from the president of the Austria chapter of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council. We will then have a small picture-taking photo op session, which I hope all of you will be standing behind and we can take a picture. And then afterwards we will begin with the actual seminar, which is expected to be 20 to 25 minutes per person. There's unfortunately one person absent, but the president will speak about this. Afterwards, we will have the 4 speakers have a Q&A session with the audience. And afterwards, we will have some Korean hors d'oeuvres and snacks and drinks upstairs. Here it is the Korean Cultural Center, and you might very much enjoy this place. Also, I want to note that we are recording this. This is not going to be broadcast live, but we will record this, edit it, and this will be disseminated through the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council website or through our YouTube channel. So without further ado, we'd like to begin the ceremonies with the Pledge of Allegiance to the Korean flag. So I request everybody to stand up. 국기에 대한 경례.
나는 자랑스러운 태극기야. 자유롭고 정의로운 대한민국의 무궁한 영광을 위하여 충성을 다할 것을 굳게 다짐합니다.
Thank you. 바로 you may be seated. I'd like to introduce Mr. Man-Wook, who is the president of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council, for some opening remarks.
So, good morning and welcome. My name is Man-Wook. I'm president of the Austria chapter of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council. First of all, I would like to inform you that first speaker, the Professor Gudrun Biffel, is sick and she cannot join this meeting. I wish she will get well soon. Okay. And first of all, I will introduce the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council. This is the constitutional institution established in accordance with the Article 92 of the Constitution of the Republic of Korea. The Peaceful Unification Council advises by request and makes proposal to the President of the Republic of Korea regarding policy, development and implementation of democratic and peaceful with the Korean unification. In view of the eventual unification of Korea, the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council aims to explore issues and policies that have impact on the unification processes. So it is my great pleasure and honor to open today's seminar on Central Eastern European experience in social integration of immigrants in view of Korean unification. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to each of you for joining us today to share in this meaningful dialogue. Today, 25th of June, is a special day for South Koreans. 75 years ago, on 25th of June 1950, the North Korean troops suddenly invaded South Korea without declaring war. And within 3 days, Seoul was occupied. The South Korean army with the UN troops fought together to protect the freedom and prevent the communization of the Korean peninsula. The war lasted 3 years and was resulted many deaths, and country was totally destroyed. Since 1953, Korea is still in a state of ceasefire. North Korea continued threatening regional and global stability through ongoing provocation, including the development of nuclear weapons and also intercontinental ballistic missiles. So also 3 weeks ago, on June 5th this year, we had a seminar on human rights in North Korea, reality and solution. This seminar serves to understand the reality of human rights violation in North Korea and communicates the seriousness of the situation to the world public. We discussed how the international community can work together to improve the human rights situation in North Korea. As Korea continues to prepare for possibility of unification, the migration and integration remain central issues and will be a big challenge. There is much we can learn from other nations' efforts. The experience of Central and Eastern European countries, many of which have undergone dramatic transition and faced complex migration dynamics, offer valuable insight into how society can successfully or sometimes unsuccessfully integrate diverse population. By reflecting on their challenges and achievements, we hope to increase our understanding of how post-unification Korea can build inclusive and resilient communities that balance cultural cohesion and social integration and economic inclusion. This seminar provides an important platform to share knowledge and discuss strategy and envision practical pathway forward. I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers and panelists and whose expertise and experience will enrich our discussions. My gratitude also goes to Peaceful Unification Advisory Council and members of Austrian chapter for making this seminar possible. I would like to extend my special thanks to Mr. Hors for his efforts. He has several online meetings with the speakers and worked hard to make this event a success. Enjoy the seminar. Thank you very much.
She cannot present, but hopefully I get to have access to her wonderful presentation, which I know would have been really, really excellent, and maybe can be shared at a later date. But hopeful of that, we will proceed with the 3 other excellent presentations, including mine. But anyway, the next speaker is Dusan Zhbolov from Czechia, and he will speak with us on the historical background of migration policy in Central and Eastern European countries with a special focus on Austria. He teaches at the Charles University in Prague. Please.
Good morning. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor for me, and especially Mr. Hors organized this very interesting, I would say, and important seminar. Maybe I should add that I come from Czechia. Maybe you don't know the term Czechia, but Czechia is a geographical name. Czech Republic is a political name. Please, I come from Prague, from Czechia. I work for, or I have been working for a long time for Charles University Faculty of Science, Department of Social Geography and Regional Development, and that's why I'm a geographer. It means please don't expect economic analysis or more, I would say, other perspectives, but it's a problem-oriented topic. Of course, integration and migration is quite important, and geography is or has been involved in studying for many years. We have a sort of tradition of studying this topic at our faculty, at our university. The topic is integration of foreigners in Czechia, special focus on Ukrainian refugees and more general lessons. It means my task is to concentrate on some particular matters related to Ukrainian war refugees inflow into our country, and maybe learn some lessons which might be useful also not only for our country but for other countries. And at the end I would, it's maybe too courageous, but I summarized some conclusions which again might be a sort of maybe inspiration for somebody who is going to tackle the same situation and same problems. Of course, the topic is quite complex, and there are many problems. We don't have time. It would take us the whole day to explain what integration is and what migration is. What is the difference between voluntary and forced migration? Again, the difference between humanitarian assistance and integration policies. These are quite different on one side, and on the other hand, quite similar phenomena. Of course, there is even no consensus on a single definition for integration. How to define it, how to grasp it, how to measure it, by the way. What we know and what we feel, of course, and what we know, it's a matter of both sides. It's a matter of those who come into a new destination country, but also it's a matter of majority population, which it's very important to realize this. This is not only about immigrants and not only about the country of immigration. There must be, of course, a sort of cooperation between these two subjects. Of course, integration is a long-term process. To assess what is important at the given moment is very difficult, because you can see more disadvantages in the very beginning, and after some time you see many advantages. It means it's very, and vice versa. And at one moment you can be very at one position very negative, if we can say, and at one moment you can really become an integral part of the society, legalized, etc., etc. It means it's really very complex and difficult to assess. To speak about integration generally, again, it's a nonsense. if we speak about integration, we have to specify what we mean by this, because we have several, you can see, dimensions, at least 4. Some authors speak about 5, some 6 dimensions of integration. It means we have, according to Heckman, we have structural integration, we have got cultural integration, we have got interactive integration, and we have got identificational integration. All in all, integration is a process requiring a reciprocal effort and having impact upon both migrants and the whole society. Again, I would stress, you can be very successful regarding one of these dimensions, but on the other hand, you can fail regarding two others. Okay, it means again we have to specify what we are talking about and what we are focusing on. I think I will not elaborate more on this. It's clear. Okay, now about some experience we have just now from a huge inflow of Ukrainian war refugees. You know, it's really unprecedented wave of war refugees regarding the whole Europe. You can see the latest data in Europe. Just now we have more than 5 million refugees. We have in Czechia about 370,000 of them registered at this moment, but generally almost 700,000 were registered. You know, 1/2 of them disappeared. They either went back to Ukraine or they went to other countries, especially in the European Union. It means very big numbers, and it started on 24th February 2022 when Russian aggression started, and of course what is important to stress that a massive influx of war refugees has created a need in the European Union for a rapid and common response, which led to the European Commission to activate Council Directive of 2001 on temporary protection and granting the status to Ukrainian refugees. It is a temporary protection status, so-called, that allows Ukrainian refugees to quickly and easily gain a more dignified position in the society of the country of destination, allowing them to enter the labor market, to help secure accommodation and enter the social, educational and healthcare systems. It goes across the whole Europe, but of course it has some specificities according to individual countries. State assistance to refugees is dealt with through special laws, measures and benefits. Access to the standard social system used by Czech citizens was not applied. It means in our country we have special laws regulating integration, and Ukrainian refugees were not allowed to enter standard social system, which is normally valid for Czech citizens. There is an adoption of the so-called Lex Ukraine 1. Just now we speak about Lex Ukraine 7/8, which specify the operation of temporary protection status, articulate the conditions that are offered by the state and which Ukrainian refugees can avail of, but also their obligations. This is only to demonstrate how robust, how huge inflow was. You can see we start with 1st of March here, and this is 10th April, and the beginning of the April. Day by day, you can see inflows. Here is 18,000. In fact, in 3 months we got almost 300,000 Ukrainian refugees. It was really unprecedented inflow. I have to mention very briefly several important facts about Czechia and my migration situation in our country. Ukrainians are not new ethnicity in our country, because you can see in 2020 we had 151,000 Ukrainians in our country, typical labor migrants, the most important, along with Slovaks, the most important immigrant group even before the Russian aggression. It was the second after Slovaks, numerous groups. We speak about traditional inflow, mostly supporting the secondary labor market, chiefly in semi-skilled or unskilled occupations, in construction, manufacturing, industry. It means we had very strong labor migrant group in our country. In the beginning of the 90s, it started 30 years ago. There were typical circular labor migrants, especially males, but over time more females came, more young people and students, more highly qualified, and more arrivals from new Ukrainian regions and localities. It means it was more and more important for us and for Ukraine as well. Before the aggression, we spoke about more stabilized migration, because between 60 and 70% of them have already had temporary, permanent state, not permanent, not temporary but permanent state, resident status. There was and still is a strong pull factor. Why we had so many Ukrainians? Because there was a strong pull, a permanent demand, mainly for unskilled and semi-skilled Ukrainian labor. Why? Good reputation, hard-working workers, similar culture and language, and historical ties. By the way, these were very important factors why Ukrainians were with us and were quite well accepted. Important factors contributing to the demand for foreign labor force: demographic problems in our country, low motivation to work among Czechs, by the way, inflexible labor contract possibilities, generous social subsidies, a low minimum wage. There is not so many stimuli among Czechs to start working. Educational systems versus labor market needs. There is a dissonance between the labor market demand and the supply of apprenticeship and study disciplines and of training programs. Low permeability of educational programs at all levels. There is really difference what schools produce on one side, and on the other side what business calls for. I mean, you know, the professions are quite different. High taxes put on labor in general and income in particular. Practices of undeclared work became a widespread and integral part of the economic culture of former times. It still survives in our country, by the way, and limited occupational and geographical spatial mobility of Czechs. All these factors contribute to, I mean, having foreigners in our country on the labor market. And what is also very important, that we have really still, after 30 years, very limited experience with migration and integration. Very limited possibility for the Czech population to travel to Western countries in the past, during the communist era. Czechia or Czechoslovakia had no colonies of its own, by the way. And during communism, only a limited contingent of selected workers, apprentices and students, mainly from Angola, Poland, Vietnam, Cuba. But these groups of workers were not integrated into society, they were segregated and separated. It means it was a very specific situation. And here you can see just now the structure by individual groups, ethnic groups, or groups by citizenship. Ukraine dominates, almost 600,000, then Slovaks, Vietnamese, Russians, etc., etc. This is the background. Various studies in Czechia on the topic of Ukrainian war refugees. We have many more studies touching particular aspects of integration or migration issues. What to lean on? now I will be presenting very briefly some results, and I am leaning on especially our results of our team, Immigrants team. It's a small team within our department, as I mentioned. We are concentrated on studying international migration and integration, but then there is a very useful PUAC research team in collaboration with Sociological Institute of our academy. They prepared a panel. They have a panel of respondents, and they can follow changes over time through this panel, and it's a very useful data source. The main purpose of the project is to study the living conditions and views of refugees from Ukraine in order to shed light on their current situation and monitor changes over time, as I said. These are details. I think it's not important just now to specify it. And now results. There are some successes. Despite, as I said, very limited experience, we succeeded in integrating two particular segments of society, Ukrainian refugees. A major success is the overall handling of the influx of war refugees, especially in the early stages, thanks to the tremendous solidarity of citizens and civil society. Without civil society, we wouldn't manage it. By the way, almost half of them were situated in the very beginning, were taken into houses or apartments of Czech majority population. It means they lived with us, you know, one half of them in the very beginning, because there was no possibility to accommodate them in some state or municipality premises, okay? It was really very strong solidarity. Partial but important successes in integration, and I will show you housing, work and language. And these are successes. You can see this is the development over time. Blue is good, is a symptom of the good development, and red is not good. This is type of current housing. This is rents. Okay, they are able to rent an apartment or a house. 80% of them, 79 just now. Okay, November 24, as compared to only 22 in June 2022. Okay. And this is the percentage of refugees in economically active population working, evolution over time. It means very quickly you can see in 2 years we have almost 80% of economically active refugees on the labor market. It means very, on one side, very good development. On the other hand, there are still good symptoms. Subjective evaluation of our knowledge of Czech. You can see in the very beginning, speak in everyday situations and understand, only 16%, and she puts a few sentences together and understands the simplest one, 31%. And just now, November 24, you can see 64% and 25%. Very quickly, they are able, they learn, refugees learn Czech language. It's very good. And the same trend concerning the children, Czech language proficiency of children aged 3 to 17. And again, you can see similar trend, quite big success. But partial but important success in integration. But what I mean by this but? The problem is that there is still huge material deprivation. Despite having a job, they are not able to earn a lot of money. They are not able, some of them, even to survive, because rent is very high, and they are really not able to somehow again function normally. And the problem is, and you can see that very often they work in a different position, and especially there is a problem with making use of their human capital. They are not able to make use of their human capital. Very often they are university educated and they work like auxiliary labor force, you know, in construction. It means it's good they are on the labor market, but bad is that really many of them are not able to work according to what they studied. Okay, you can see here, this is in Ukraine, 45% were specialists, whereas in Czechia only 16%. And you can see helpers and unskilled workers, 3% in Ukraine and 14% in Czechia, and operation on machinery and equipment 6 and 30%. It means really it's a sad story that we are not able to make use of the human capital. It's a loss for everybody. It's a loss for them, it's a loss for us, it's a loss for country of origin, it's a loss for themselves, and etc. etc. It's not good. There is also another problem that it has to do with this auxiliary labor force and unskilled professions, precarious work. Precarious work is typical of Ukrainian workers. By the way, it's characterized by low legal protection, low pay, poor working conditions, low levels of occupational health and safety, lack of benefits and entitlements tied to the existence of length of employment. You can see social security, maternity benefits, parental leave, and little or no opportunity to improve one's qualifications. And here you can see the results of the panel. I also work at the weekend or late in the evening, 56%. I take less than Czechs who work in the same position, 1/3 of them, etc., etc. My employer doesn't pay my health insurance, 13%. It means big problems. And to summarize it, the current utilization of the human capital of Ukrainian workers in the Czech labor market is low. Great pressure on economic self-sufficiency at the expense of language preparation. Even they could be better at Czech language, but they are not able to learn, they have no time. Illegal or quasi-legal employment activities of Ukrainian workers within so-called agency employment. We have really, this is a pragmatically constructed system of formal, quasi-formal and informal relationship between the user, the agency and the employee, where workers often find themselves in a subordinate position and are exploited in many ways. Wages, working and living conditions, working hours. There are coordinators, and the problem is that there is a connection to the so-called client system in the Czechia. We had this system, mafia-based, I would say, system in the 90s, and we have it again. And unfortunately, Ukrainian workers suffer from this problem. What do we suffer from? There is a lack of now some more general remarks. There is a lack of vision, what to do, how to do it, and where to go. Ukrainian refugees are still largely viewed as only a temporary phenomenon. Their importance to Czech society is underestimated. It's a problem because still we don't realize that this is the good and potential asset for the country. There is a neglect in working with the majority population. Objective and systematic information is lacking. Certain aspects of their stay remain mythologized, and there is insufficient effort to combat misinformation. These are problems. We have other problems. I will very quickly go through it. Better utilization of human capital. As I said, it's a general problem. It doesn't concern only refugees. Combating unfair practices in the labor market, particularly those involving intermediaries or fraudulent employment agencies. I have already spoken about it. Higher standard of living. Yes, again, as I said, many of them have really big problems to survive. Education and better inclusion of children in society. Very important aspect because it's a future generation, and by the way, very often it has to do with labor force, because mothers are responsible for their children, and it's a sort of burden put on them, because if no kindergarten is available, then mothers they have to take care of the children. They cannot earn the money, and they are of course dependent on social subsidies. That's the problem. Healthcare, the same problem. We have problems, by the way, capacities in our school and capacities regarding health service. Only 1/3 of Ukrainian workers have a practitioner doctor at this moment. It means 2/3 of them, they don't have practitioners. They cannot find them, and it takes time, but they have to wait several months, etc., etc. There are many problems with capacities. Housing affordability, again, it's a big problem. By the way, many problems follow the problems which Czech population has within the system. Housing. You know, if you are if you have a young couple in Prague and you are searching for a possibility to have an own apartment or house in the city, in the capital city, it's impossible. The price is horrible. The price is so high that really it's impossible for young people without help of parents, for example. They cannot manage. And of course, it's even more difficult for refugees to somehow handle the situation. International cooperation, I have to stress that especially UN agencies, primarily UNICEF, IOM, WHO, and UNHCR, they really contributed importantly to the assistance, with the assistance. Cooperation between Czech authorities, again, we would need better cooperation. Digitalization, it goes on, but still slowly, and over-concentration. There is a very sensitive issue of relocation of those who came, because some regions are really overloaded, and it means that there is no capacity. As I mentioned, you can see our colleagues from the department tried to estimate the capacities, and you can see the green color still sort of free capacities. It means in Moravia still more capacities for refugees in terms of, you can see, labor market, health, education services, whereas in Prague and in some northern and western part of the country, it's really without any capacity. It means the question is how to relocate refugees to those places. You can see Ostrava, Zlín still some capacities, Prague, Pilsen without free capacities. Research activities and how to improve the situation. We call for more research and more analysis, and you can see the Czech government really, I think there is still room for improvement, because the government should cooperate much more intensively with academic sphere in this regard. Now I am coming to very quickly just now to the end, and some challenges I feel very important to take into account and to somehow try to solve. Okay, migration policy challenge 1. How to design active migration integration policies that, besides being overshadowed by steps taken to adopt EU legislation, would also effectively respond to the current local environment. It means not only to adopt automatically something from the above, you know, but to somehow remodel it and to have it specific to our needs. Challenge number 2, how to design and perform coherent migration integration policies. Is it possible at all? That's the question. How to harmonize policies or sub-policies. migration versus integration. It should be harmonized. We know many, at least some very bad examples when it's not harmonized, these policies. And this is the same with migration versus integration policies, economic versus migration policy, okay? Development versus migration, policy versus migration policy. Challenge number 4, how to harmonize policy, legislation and conceptual documents with practice. There is a problem, how are laws implemented in the field and problems with discretion. Sometimes you can have discretion quite different from what was the main idea, you know, and direction was this, and through direction we have this direction. It means that's also a problem. How to share migratory integration competencies among sectors and in terms of regional hierarchical structures, state, region, municipality. What sort forms of a cooperation? By the way, we neglected municipality level. In our country, and it's not good. When speaking about integration, you should start from the bottom. Municipality knows the best what to do because they know the situation. And we ignore, in our country, unfortunately, this level. We started with regional level, but we ignored to a large extent municipalities. How to measure whether immigrants' integration process is successful or not? What sort of criteria should be taken into account, and how to evaluate effectivity of individual programs? It means only to measure integration. It's a problem, and really it deserves attention. How to objectively inform the public about the migration integration forms, areas, stakeholders. You need support from the public, and you have to explain them what's going on, objectively explain and discuss these issues. Challenge number 8, how to reasonably and effectively cooperate with source immigration countries. What sort of aid directed to whom and how organized? Cooperate with the country from which I have got immigrants, you know, and to have a dialogue with these countries. How to improve statistics of international migration and immigrants integration. Again, generally, we know better, we need better data. What, where, when, and how to cover and release, how is data to be processed and publicized, and how to bring more financial sources into the migration integration field. There is a dream, and I am finishing with some possible recommendations for Korean maybe government, maybe it's too strong. There is a dream here to develop clear, systematic, comprehensive, coherent, but also flexible, anticipatory and far-sighted migration and integration policies and relevancy policies. It's a dream for everybody, but of course, dream is dream. Now, immigration policy considerations for the Korean government. First, have a vision followed by a strategy. It's very important to have a vision. Define what you want to achieve in the given field, set clear goals, and determine the means by which to reach them. Second, centralizing the management of migration and integration policy can be effective, but it should not be absolute. Besides the essential security perspective, it must also respect other aspects of diversity: economic, demographic, cultural, and social. Key to success is cooperation between government ministries responsible for crucial areas such as security, residency, employment, social support, education, and health. Equally important is collaboration between the state and non-governmental, private, international, or supranational organizations that are also involved in migration and integration. Ensure that measures taken in governance comply with legislation. Again, I am repeating it, as there is a risk of significant deviation due to discretion. The micro level is very important. The role of municipalities whose efforts to integrate foreigners should be supported. Their integration needs must be systematically managed and coordinated and ensured in the relevant legislation. And migration and integration management must be data-driven, based on analysis and research. These must regularly and systematically map the situation within the broader context of societal developments and be able to respond immediately to unforeseen events that could potentially or actually alter the nature of migration flows and impact the integration of foreigners. The impacts of adopted measures and programs must be monitored and evaluated. And the last slide, the state should ensure good monitoring and more sophisticated, reliable and detailed statistics on international migration as well as on the integration processes of foreigners residing in the country. Without statistics you wouldn't have good analysis and research. You need good data. The state, together with non-governmental or international entities, should initiate discussions and create platforms on the topic of international migration and integration of foreigners. Public access to objective information on these processes must be ensured, with a key role played by mass media, academia, and non-profit sector. Educational programs should place great emphasis on the theory and practice of intercultural learning and communication from preschool education to university level. It needs time. You have to start really early and start from kindergartens. The state should facilitate the labor market integration of long-term resident foreigners as much as possible by appropriately utilizing their education and experience. This includes ensuring resident status stability, fast diploma recognition, access to language education, special courses, flexible work arrangements, and potential retraining opportunities. All out efforts must be made to combat illegal migration and unauthorized economic activities of foreigners. It is particularly important to monitor and strictly penalize labor recruitment agencies that exploit foreign workers, especially vulnerable populations such as those unfamiliar with the language, mothers with children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. And promote and implement a wide range of language courses. Knowing language is the key in the main language of the destination country of foreigners, both within the standard education system and for adults. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Some people are using translation devices. Is it working? Is it okay? 괜찮아요? 수신기 이용하시는 분이 계신다면 문제가 있으면 저한테 알려주시기 바랍니다. Thank you very much, Professor Dusan Bolov. The next speaker is Ivan Josipovich, who is a postdoc, and he is working with the Austrian Academy of Sciences in Vienna, Austria. And his presentation title is Economic Powerhouse, Conservative Values, and Historical Proximity, Poland's Integration Approach for Ukrainians. Please.
All right. Thank you so much again for this kind introduction, and thank you for having me at this panel. I think it's a really great opportunity to discuss a very interesting case of European integration policies. Poland, a country which I think is a very, very dynamic case in the past 8-9 years in which I've been studying European migration and asylum politics. Poland has undergone really tremendous transformation. And I'll get to that in a second, but let me just say that Poland has traditionally, or for much of the 20th century, has really been this classical emigration country where people left the country after World War II, but then also in the early 1990s after the fall of the Iron Curtain. And then Poland also experienced a massive emigration wave after its accession to the European Union in 2004. And now in the past few years, we really experienced a completely different trend, with Poland becoming an important economic powerhouse in the European Union, attracting labor migration, and then in the most recent years also a high number of refugees, especially from Ukraine, which I will talk about today. So in the first part of the presentation, I will really get into the population diversity of Poland and address the role of Ukrainians in that context. And then the main part will really be about the integration needs of Ukrainian refugees in Poland, the policy responses by the central government, and then in the final part, I will try to come up with some key takeaways from the country. All right, now if we look at the population diversity of Poland today, so this is a statistic from 2024, and if we look at the share of foreign-born persons in the resident population, we can see that in a European context, Poland is not a particularly diverse country. It's important to note here that this statistic does not entail short-term labor migrants, and that's a very high share, and it also does not entail the Ukrainian refugees. So you can basically think of this statistic more as a representative of what Poland looked like maybe six or 5 years ago. But you can see that it is a country which does not have a lot of experience in terms of ethnic diversity. And here we also see this kind of development from 1950 up to 2022 of Poland being a country which has been a net immigration country through most of the 20th century, right? So in orange here you see net migration has always been negative up until 2015, 2016, where it started to become positive. And this again only includes long-term immigration. If we look at the demographics today, Ukrainians are the biggest group of long-term residents, foreign nationality. This is a census from 2021, and you can see long-term Ukrainian residents in Poland are almost 300,000, which is quite a lot for a country of about 36 million. But again, this does not entail the refugees, and it does not entail short-term labor migrants. How come that the Ukrainian population is so much bigger than the other foreign nationalities represented in Poland, for example, from Belarus, Russia, Vietnam, India, Germany? I mean, we can really look at the economic dynamics of the past years on the one hand, or the past 2 centuries, past 2 decades, but we can also go much further back in history, all the way back to the 16th and 18th century, Poland's ties with Ukraine in the context of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Also, some of the regions of Poland and Ukraine are deeply intertwined. Galicia, Bukovina, which were, for example, part of the Habsburg Empire. And then also fast forward to the 1990s, where both Poland and Ukraine have kind of developed this post-Soviet experience, or a post-Soviet version also towards Russia, I would say. And Poland being also one of the first countries to recognize Ukraine's independence in '91, and also being a strong advocate for its EU and NATO integration. And then this is what we are looking at when we move on to the early 2010s. So in the early 2010s, we can see that Poland is experiencing new levels of immigration from Ukraine, and this was mainly temporary labor migration. So you can see this spike going all up to 2019, where Polish work permits issued to Ukrainians reached more than 300,000 in that year. And as I said, this is more or less temporary labor migration. People, mainly men, coming from Ukraine to work in Poland in the manufacturing sector, in the agricultural sector. And that was really a result of active migration and labor market policy from the central Polish government. Why is that? Because in the early 2010s, Poland realized it has a massive demographic issue, an aging population. Also, as I mentioned, mass emigration of Polish workers after the EU accession in 2004. People were going to Germany, to the UK, and so on to find work. We have massive labor shortages in certain sectors of the Polish economy. So what the Polish government did essentially was they introduced new policies that enable an easier access of Ukrainians, but also other nationalities in the labor market, simply by allowing people to enter the country, find an employer, and the employer would send their confirmation to the government, which would simply allow them to work without having to apply for work permit first. And that also arrived with a visa liberalization that is basically EU-wide in effect since 2017. So what happened was really that we had this new wave of labor migrants into the areas of agriculture, but also construction. So you can see, for example, in Warsaw, in the past 4 years, about 23% of the workers in construction were from Ukraine. But then also in the area of domestic care, where women, especially now in the context of refugees, are entering the labor market, and also manufacturing, which is very important for the economic boom in Poland. Back then, Poland still did not think actively about an integration, about the social integration policy. So that was really a policy of addressing economic, demographic issues. But in terms of social integration, there was not much consideration, because we have, with this temporary labor migration, a productive, low-cost migrant wave entering the country, and by being employed in Poland, these people were automatically socially insured. So the social insurance system in Poland is really tied to formal employment, so they were not an socioeconomic burden to the country. And the country and the central government did not see any needs to create any social integration policies. So much of the 2000s, 2010s, the central government was really reluctant to introduce language courses or vocational education courses, to have housing market integration policies. What we saw instead was really that local authorities, especially in smaller cities and often in cooperation with NGOs, started to develop small integration projects, because those were the areas which are most ethnically diverse, of course, yeah. And here you had NGOs working, for example, to develop language courses, also vocational education courses, supporting people finding a flat, etc. So a lot of expertise was gathered on that local level, yeah. On the national and central government level, Poland remained a country which is very much averse towards immigration, especially in the context of asylum. So when we had the so-called EU refugee crisis in 2015-16, with a lot of people from Syria, Afghanistan coming in, both the central government, but also the broader population, was rather averse towards accepting refugees. So in April 2016, for example, about 61% of Poles rejected accepting refugees. Now this whole picture turned around in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we had this massive new influx of refugees from Ukraine coming in. I'll just give you this broad overview. So in March 2025, we had almost 1 million Ukrainians under so-called temporary protection, what Dusan just mentioned. So effectively refugees moving to Poland, or being permanent or temporarily in Poland, maybe permanently. But it's about 1 million people, and when you look at the ratio per 1,000 people, Poland, together with Czechia and Slovakia, are one of the countries hosting most refugees from Ukraine. And this group is very different in terms of demographics compared to the labor migrants. These are now mostly women. You can see about 93% are women, coming often with children and partly also with elderly people. And of course, now Poland was confronted with having to introduce some kind of integration policies, right? Because these people are in urgent need of housing, of healthcare, of education, but also of employment. So there is no a priori employment there, which would allow them, to refinance the social security system, but you have to organize pretty much everything at once, yeah? Dusan mentioned that we have the EU Temporary Protection Directive, which is an EU law, which essentially sets up certain standards for how European member states have to treat refugees in that context coming from Ukraine, in terms of legal residence, in terms of labor market access, in terms of providing certain social services. So there was some kind of also European pressure, top-down pressure on the Polish government, of course, to become active and to pass laws that would, implement this access to residence, to labor market, to social security. But that was also, I think that's important to say here, it was also backed by support in society. Because compared to the refugee wave in 2015-16, now Polish society, or a broad part of society, where it's very supportive of Ukrainian refugees. So, as I said, we have now this new group with this conflict displaced group of immigrants, no longer workers. They have temporary protection, where all has to be organized at once, and who are to some degree eligible for certain welfare services, for health services and education. And here we have a completely different logic, yeah? It's not about labor market driven policies, it's really about how to implement this humanitarian, how to facilitate this humanitarian immigration and integration. Now, I'm drawing on a few studies, this one from Kubica and Solga from 2023. Take a look at how or what the integration needs among refugees and labor migrants are in Poland, and that's a study from, as I said, 2023 in the Opolskie region, a southern region in Poland, where they interviewed people labor migrants from Ukraine and refugees. And what becomes evident, and the refugees are the ones in purple, is that one of the most important changes proposed by these Ukrainian refugees is easier access to rental accommodation, subsidies for renting of flats, and then down here, assistance in finding a job and Polish language courses. So that really ties into what Dusan also talked about in the Czech context. So what did the federal government in Poland do in terms of labor market integration policies? So they passed the so-called Special Assistance Act, which was aimed to implement this European directive, or to transpose it. And essentially, that means that Ukrainian refugees do not need a work permit. They're immediately eligible to access the labor market. And they only require employer notification the first days. And then the Ministry of Family and Social Policy also introduced in the early days of the war a multilingual online job matching platform for people to have easier access, transparency into the jobs available in the market. And then it also fostered the funding of language courses. But that remains a problem pretty much until today, because there is simply not enough courses, or they're mainly located in the large cities. And of course, in terms of the scope and the quality, these courses differ tremendously. And a lot of these courses are just for the basic level of language learning. And then if you want to attend other courses, you would often have to go to bigger cities to find these types of courses. Also, an important measure that the government took in 2024 was to introduce a mandatory school attendance for Ukrainian children. And the policy logic was twofold. Because on the one hand, they established a rule that school attendance would be tied to child benefits. So if you want to receive child benefits as a Ukrainian for your child, you would have to send them to school, right? And then also the idea is to have children being in school so that the mothers mostly are able to find employment, yeah? There's dual logic behind that. So far we have to say that the labor market integration of Ukrainians in Poland is going comparatively well. About 65% of people are employed, and that's a very high number in the OECD context. However, it's important to also remember what also, again, Dusan mentioned, what kind of jobs are these? And a lot of times these are rather precarious jobs. short-term contracts, not full-hour jobs. A lot of them are in tourism and hospitality, logistics, partly also manufacturing. But as I said, this is a very much female-dominated demographic of refugees, and a lot of them really work in tourism, hospitality, partly also in care work. And again, and that's also what the Polish Economic Institute finds, remaining issues are that people still lack language qualifications, also the recognition of their qualifications, of their certificates from Ukraine is not so easy in many cases. And they also find a certain degree of discrimination if there's two people applying with the same qualification for the same job and there's a Ukrainian name, people would tend to be rather treated worse than Polish names. Now, as I said, there's another issue when it comes to labor market integration. There's also something that Kubitschek and Solga point out in the context of their study of the Opolski province, and that's a province, as I said, in the southern part of Poland, which is socioeconomically a rather weak region, structurally weak region. And what they found really was that there was a quite strong mismatch between the qualifications of people that were located in this region and the job supply in that region. And that really points to a larger issue that not just Poland is facing, but also other countries. There is no national allocation mechanism of where Ukrainian refugees should go. We saw that in the context of the Czech graphic. A lot of people are moving to the big cities, and then there's regions where certain reception accommodations, for example, are placed, but which are structurally weak regions. And then there's also regions where nobody is going, but where there might be, for example, jobs in the tourism sector. So this problem can be kind of summarized under the term brain waste. Yeah, this is what the authors do in this study. Because one important factor for choosing the location for Ukrainians was really social ties. So they would see where are my relatives, friends, people that I know, and they would immediately go to that city, irrespective of what the labor market looks like or the housing opportunities are. And there would be some mismatches there. Here again, a study which kind of shows the expected versus received support among Ukrainian refugees. There was a study conducted in Lodz, and what you see here in black, the expected support for job counseling is much higher than what people actually received. The same applies to access to housing, Polish language courses, and professional training, all the factors that have been mentioned earlier as well. When people arrive to Poland, they would a lot of times either go to private accommodations, be hosted by private people, by citizens, by relatives, by people that they know, or they would go to collective accommodation facilities that were set up at some point in the Polish regions. And these are basically facilities where they can stay for free for the first 120 days, and then later they would have to contribute to their housing financially. And those were mostly hotels, dormitories, repurposed public buildings. And in response to that, and that I think is kind of a best practice that we can also look at from the regional, for the local level, there have been a lot of local or regional initiatives, and one of them was driven by the NGO Oselenie Foundation. This is basically an NGO that was initially active in Warsaw and then moved on to other cities as well. And kind of what they, for example, did was to sublet private flats on long-term leases and then charge below market rents for Ukrainians newly arriving in the city. And these rents would only gradually increase over time as people were able then to find jobs. And this foundation is also active in other areas of integration. For example, they would offer psychological support, vocational consultations, and also cooperation with large companies like IKEA, for example, where Ukrainians would be able to go to a potential employer and see what kind of works are offered there. Now, the federal government is now kind of trying to catch up after almost 3 years, and what they are trying to install right now, and I'm coming pretty much to the end now, is to introduce so-called foreigners integration centers across the different regions in Poland. And the idea is really to have a one-stop shop, one specific location where, for example, Ukrainian refugees, but also other immigrants can go to, first of all, register for their legal residence permit, also provide information on their qualifications and whether they're available to search for a job. They can, in some cases, access language courses in these places, psychological support. Of course, they will most likely differ depending on the region, what kind of resources they have. And there's already certain regions and cities which are rejecting the introduction of these centers because they have more generally anti-immigrant attitudes. But the idea is really to kind of streamline this process of registering and then enrolling in these different types of institutional frameworks. With this, I'm coming to my last slide. So, what can we take away from this this specific case of Central Eastern Europe? First of all, I think it's important to kind of look at Poland and remember that even a historically non-immigration country or an only labor migration country can have political, cultural, or humanitarian reasons to integrate newcomers. There's this possibility of unforeseen events, domestic or geopolitical, which lead, or in political science we call this a critical juncture, a moment which changes the series of events, which changes policy trajectories, and which, in that case, makes the country face a humanitarian type of immigration, not just labor migration. And the country has to be prepared for that. Policymakers have to be prepared for that. So the second aspect is really know your newcomers. And this ties back really to the question of collecting data on the needs and qualifications early on in the registration of these newcomers, and try to streamline the enrollment procedure, because there's all of these questions coming up in the beginning, where to find a job, where to register for healthcare, for social insurance, etc. And this has to be streamlined and can be also geographically kind of concentrated. Third, subsidize housing where necessary, but also strategically allocate newcomers to match regional labor market needs. And this is something where we can also look to other countries. So I spent a few months in Switzerland 2 years ago, and Switzerland, in the context of the classical asylum system, have introduced really an algorithm where they try to strategically assign asylum seekers to particular cantons, to regions, not just based on their needs and individual situation, but also based on the country's structural conditions. Fourth, legal access to the labor market is not enough. So in this case, we see there is free access, legally free access to the labor market. But as a policymaker, you really have to consider all these types of practical hurdles, starting from language to childcare to recognition of qualifications, and think of practical solutions. And here, I think the fifth point comes in: involve local administrations and NGOs in policy development and implementations, because especially in countries which do not have a lot of policy expertise on the central government level, there is often people, especially in cities, in ethnically diverse places, who have experience in supporting people finding a job, language, etc. So really make sure that you use these resources on the central government level. All right, and with this, I'm really coming to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to our conversation afterwards.
Thank you very much, Ivan Josipovic. The next speaker is Daniela Popeva from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences in Sofia, Bulgaria. And her topic title is Striking a Balance Between East, Russia, and West, EU and Turkey. Please. The background of all the speakers are in the pamphlet, so please read them. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank to the Council for this invitation, which was a challenge for me, because I was supposed to think about everything what I have done for migration in my professional career in order to give you, to offer to you some lessons learned, although you're going to learn your own lessons on the way too, because the countries are not made by their governments or presidents, they are made by the people. So the most important thing for migration is how the people feel about. I remember my first visit abroad, because as Dusan said, we were not allowed to travel freely, was in Salzburg. It was in 1992. What I remember from this time, I was invited to participate in the Salzburg seminar, you know, Salzburg seminar. What I remember was crying for at least 2 days out of the 10 days I was there, seeing the other world behind the wall, and eating bananas. I couldn't stop eating bananas. We were called this, my generation was called the banana generation in Central and Eastern Europe because of this. So whatever is your role in the future, this process of unification, you should take care for the people and you should be in their shoes how they feel about migration. Most of you, by definition, are migrants. You live in another country for more than 1 year. So if I ask you whether you are integrated in Austria, I know the answer. Even some of us feel they are not integrated in their own country. So it's thanks to Dusan for his academic description about integration, but together with all these concepts, how the people feel is the most important, and whatever policy you do in the future, you should think how the people feel about this, both sides, north and south. I don't know why Gudrun gave me, because I'm a friend of her, that's why she gave me very difficult task to think about East and West. We don't think about East and West in contemporary economy, politics, etc. We want to forget about this division. But she still wants me to speak about this. I'm not going to talk about Ukrainians. I'm going to talk about trying to be in your shoes. The first lesson what I learned from the migration history of Bulgaria, which is very traumatic one, this is that migration is like the sea. It occurs in waves. So if you look at the sea, you will see the wave which is coming is bigger, stronger. When it goes up, it's calmer. So the problem is how high are the waves. And what we observe in the case of Bulgarian migration, it is always like waves, out or in, and this creates the difficulty to manage it. Although every government put in its program, let's manage migration. It is not manageable, but at least the policy should be dedicated to manage as much as possible in order to avoid any shocks. I'd like to say a few words about why our experience with migration matters. 3 cases of integration programs I'm going to present, and some not recommendations, ideas about all the aspects of migration: economic, social, political, and regional considerations. So apart from the personal one I just mentioned, those are, you cannot cut one from another one. They should be considered as a package deal. Why Bulgarian experience matters? We experienced net migration. So at the beginning we were a country of net emigration, so more living than returning and incoming. Transit migration, a lot of transit migration. And recently, the couple of last years, we became a net immigration country. So from all these experiences, there are lessons to be drawn. This picture shows something which will happen to you. We had Turkish minority, which decided upon wrong political decisions of the socialist government, they decided to go to Turkey. So it occurred like this. Of course it was before 20, 30 years, but massive way out from the country. What is the result? Empty cities, empty villages, closed enterprises because no people to work there. On top of it, a lot of political turbulences, which, by the way, contributed to the change of the regime. So we have to be grateful to those people. So what is going on now? A little bit about the picture. Foreign-born population only 3%. So we are in the row. Less foreign-born Poland, as Ivan showed, and then Romania, and then we are the one. Residence permit issued from 9,000, now it is 20,000. 33% work permits, 32 family, 12 education, more coming in educational system. We have 52,000 immigrants. And we have a lot of return migration, but it took, be careful, it took 20 years to have large return migration. So it takes time elevating the living standard in the country in order to have more return migration. 33,000 foreign migrants, only 2% EU citizens. We had more UK citizens, but after they left the European Union, some of them returned back. So return migration, 10,000. Labor migration, we have a lot of labor migration. As Dusan said, much before the war and the invasion of Russia and Ukraine, we had a lot of Ukrainian seasonal workers for catering and tourism sector. By the way, this is relatively easy inflow to be managed with good policy. This is manageable migration to fill in the gap in tourism sector. We have a large Bulgarian minority in Ukraine, and we constantly have a sufficient number of Ukrainians who receive Bulgarian citizenship. This is illegal according to the Ukrainian law. They cannot have double citizenship, but we allow them to have it. And breaking the law is always not good, because when they came now, after the beginning of the war, they were not entitled to any financial support because they are treated as Bulgarian citizens, while those who didn't get the Bulgarian citizenship. So these are things. Law is good to be followed. What else? So we felt we are external border of European Union with Turkey, where the largest inflows of refugees from Middle East are coming. So we are the first line. So that's why we experienced two large Syrians waves of immigration. And Afghans is permanently a wave, coming back and forth in the different part of the year. So protecting the border is a problem. We impose a lot of regulations, technologies, etc. But maybe it's not very politically correct to say, but we were all countries, Central and Eastern Europe, supportive to Ukrainians. We gave them our houses to live. We shared jobs with them, etc. But we were not so nice with Syrians, for example. So the region is still not up to the international standards as regards immigration and integration of migrants. We are trying more than anyone else to regulate, to make it in good frame. But in the case of refugees, the population was very much pro and supportive, while for some other groups not so much. So you see applications of refugees, it is waves, you know. Also for the refugees with humanitarian status also. So what are the lessons learned from all this? The first one who emigrated, and the first one you could expect to come to South Korea, the most intelligent one. So this was the brain drain. In late 90s, I was member of a big team from Central and Eastern European universities conducting a survey, brain drain from Central and Eastern Europe. This was a unique situation when academies of sciences, university, they lost a lot of their scientists because they were easily accepted by the receiving countries. That time we were happy. I have articles in this time, and I said it is so good that our brains went to the other side. Simply because they are going to learn, produce something valuable for the science, and they will return back. Of course they didn't return back for a long period of time. Yes, brain exchange was kind of promoted from this period, but the problem was that the academies and the universities suffered lack of high quality personnel, scientific personnel. And those were mainly natural sciences, where due to the socialist kind of educational and scientific system, there were really brains in these sectors of science. So the second one, so this was the first part of it. The second part of which you could expect also in South Korea, those are, as Dusan said, skilled people, but assuming unskilled positions. The result is not short-term, but more long-term migration. And both of cases, brain drain and labor short-term turning to long-term migration, they contributed to the overall growth, economic growth, but the emptiness of some regions became a big problem for the future. Not at the moment, but we felt, so if you depopulate a region, it is very difficult to repopulate it. This is clear, very clear example, not only from Bulgaria, from Greece, for example, they provided very generous schemes to have the Greek minority from Russia, no, Georgia, some other countries. They paid an enormous amount of money to populate some of their, because Greece have extensive emigration to other parts of Europe. They were just taking the money for a couple of years and then moved to Athens and Thessaloniki. So these kind of relocation programs, I know a lot of money are thrown in this, but I don't know successful example of this. At least maybe my knowledge is limited, but there are no. So what are the lessons? to turn into immigration country 30 years, highly skilled I mentioned. Shock migration is damaging. Damaging for the people from both sides and the economies and societies from both sides, emigration and immigration. Shock therapy of migration policy doesn't work. At least there are no good examples. The programs of encouraging the return have a negligible impact. Remittances and return migration does not compensate the loss of population and economic growth. So who and how to integrate? As Dusan said, there is a need of vision and also strategy. What you would like to achieve with this? You said peaceful unification. Peaceful unification is very important target. But after the peaceful unification, you could have peaceful unification if you succeeded in making the process gradual, not so much in shocks. So avoiding migration shocks is the best for the two sides. Invited migration, so a couple of policies issues. In my capacity, several years ago as Deputy Prime Minister, I initiated a large integration program, the first ever and the last, I'm afraid, for integration of Syrian refugees, because we were having something like 50, 60,000 for 6 million country. This is a lot. I asked OECD, my friends from the OECD migration group, to help in designing the program. It was beautiful in theory. It was doing what one of my colleagues said before, putting emphasis on municipalities. We said to the municipalities, you are the one to integrate these people. Yes, central government will give you money, will give you whatever you want, but you have to integrate these people. It was beautiful, but the next government, after my government, didn't give any money, and municipality said, okay, we are not doing anything. And it is when you talk about integration, we are talking about money also, not only expertise, but you need money and good analysis on the impact assessment. I'm not trying to discourage you to do this kind of things, but you should have a strategy vision to do this, because region should be empty, shouldn't be empty. So what we did, I think that not only South Korea but North Korea should be careful about this whole process. So immigration is important for both sides. So what they have to do is something like we try to do, to encourage people to stay and return, because you are the same people, the same language, the same culture, but I don't believe that it is the same as before the split of the country. The culture in Northern Korea is totally different, and it is enlarging this difference. So there are cultural differences which should be taken into consideration. Cultural initiatives, whatever, funding from state budget. Citizenship is important, but this is going to be technically done in your case. Integration programs for Ukrainians with humanitarian status. We were very generous, and at the end, we didn't succeed broadly. With Syria, language courses helped a lot. What we observe now is if you compare Syrians with Ukrainians, you see that Syrians are more staying for longer than Ukrainians. Ukrainians more travel as transitory destination. Bulgaria, while Syrians, they stay. Even I saw one of them in the TV commenting on now the conflict with Iran, etc., which means that these people feel comfortable, more or less. Professional training is very weak. So education mentioned already by my colleagues. There is a huge difference in the technical skills and knowledge and organization of labor and the production. So there is a huge room for support here. What successful integration means: individual perception I mentioned, protected human rights and compliance with international rules for protection. I would prefer the programs we did with some Polish colleagues and Spanish. We did a lot on the promotion of migrant entrepreneurship. I know I checked in your statistical data, the number of companies born. You have an entrepreneurial spirit in Korea, a lot, but the wave is coming with migrants new because they are free to do their own business. So this is a large wave of entrepreneurship which will boost the economy. But it needs a lot of care about SMEs and how they will perform. Positive economic impact. I'm an economist, so I do care about money and economy. So at the end, this does matter, irrespectively of how successful we are with the first two. The economic impact of everything what concerns migration should be done much in advance and not post factum. Acceptable societal perception. This is not, it's not early, irrespectively of when we are going to merge the two countries. The South Korea should manipulate the public opinion to put the other ones from the north on equal footing and accepting them as equal. Otherwise they will feel miserable and the whole process will be not successful. So what are the challenges with the integration? Irregularity. When we don't have Syrian waves of migrants, we empty the special campuses we established for them. We close them. Then in a couple of years, again we open them. So it is very difficult to manage these kind of things. Cultural diversity, different motivations of migrants. There are some on transit, some for the migration, some others who would like to settle, some others earn money and go back. Labor migration, family reunion, business, etc. Target groups for integration require specific integration approach. This is, we thought that one program for anyone fits. No, one doesn't fit all. It should be by groups. For Syrians, for example, we were one religion, the other one were another religion, and they fight between themselves. So you should take into consideration that people should be not in the same footing as regards integration. Human rights protection, what is aim and impact, you're going to read the presentation later. Strengthening labor supply. I see the unemployment in South Korea is low level, 2-3%, and aging of population. All this means that you need a labor, pushing the labor supply, which will keep the prices down, less inflation. So the unification will be favorable to the labor market, less tight labor market. A return, as I said, no good things. 10 Bulgarian policy and regulatory mistakes. People are working from mistakes, not from successes. So let's. So first, what we have done is that our legal framework is lagging behind the migration. The migration is very dynamic, and legislation is always lagging behind. And you miss the momentum to make the changes. So be aware that you have a very stable legal framework in Korea, I know. You change laws very difficultly, so it should take time. But in the case of migration, authorities should be prepared to change the legislation as needed, more pro-market oriented. What else we didn't do nicely? Linking migration with foreign direct investment was a mistake. Actually, we were providing residence permits and citizenship for rich migrants. It was a mistake. If there are questions, I may answer this question. Why? Bilateral labor treaties. I have a beautiful article in the OECD report with Jean-Pierre Garçon, who is an icon in migration, of course with Gudrun. I was so enthusiastic about bilateral employment treaties. Two governments decide this number of people, these occupations, they pack the suitcases, come, everything regulated, the project finish, go back, etc. Very beautiful one. This, by the way, this report of the OECD is a very good one. And it helped a lot to for the first wave of people to get better integrated into the economic and labor situation in the receiving countries. They are useful now in a lot. These kind of programs are used in Southern America between those countries. Some of the I think that the Japanese are trying to do something with Philippines. So there is plenty of literature on this subject. I don't know how relevant is this for your case, but pay attention to this, which makes migration more regularized. Poor statistics. We are academicians with Dusan. We start with complaining about statistics, but Dusan, remember at the beginning, in the beginning of 90s, we didn't have any statistics. Now he will show us beautiful pictures, comparative. So it's much better, but still not enough. Underestimation of negative impact of immigration. We believe that immigration is good for us, which was a mistake. Wrong institutional framework. Oh my God, we have fragmentation between different ministries, but as far as I know, the governance structure of South Korea, it is more pyramidal, kind of more straightforward, more centralized. Don't lose it. It is a big advantage because now we have President does something, government does something, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Interior. So it is a nightmare, and they have committees. One committee at the president, another one. So the migration should be like you, very well governed in a hierarchical way. So we have 11 laws and more than 20 bylaws. Again, too many. We have 3 strategies, several plans of action, regular impact assessment, a lot on this. It should be simplified and make it more working. Rely on external rather than internal financing. Dusan mentioned about Ukrainians. We also receive a lot of support from international organizations for integration of refugees from Ukraine, and not only. This is wrong. Although they will be happy to give you a lot of money, yeah, get the money, but anyway, we didn't learn that we have to share our money in order to integrate these people. So it's wrong, in my view. No policy for young migrants and foreign students. This is what we didn't do. We have a huge number of foreign students in our universities, but not program which gives them better access to the labor market, supporting them to stay in the country. So you need, I think, something of that sort if you don't have it already. Too generous citizenship policy. We produce annually 10,000 North Macedonians, Bulgarians. They receive Bulgarian citizenship and they said, oh, we are not Bulgarians, we just get it for the citizenship. I'm at the end. Integration policy. The experience suggests three main factors that facilitated and made the integration of migrants acceptable. Language, you don't have this problem. Public opinion of population, media, local authorities, NGOs, they have to be favorable, and money. Is it correct?
Correct.
Okay. Full utilization of economic impact of migration. This is my main idea. Design a policy that will channel migration for the benefit of integration of economy, labor market considerations, unemployment. I mentioned capitalize on the entrepreneurial spirit that will arise immediately after unification. SMEs in Korea, 8 million, 6% per annum. It's going to be double at least. Capture highly skilled. Do not disregard the sending country consideration. The economy is made by people. Shock migrations, again, spontaneous or regulated. Shock migration creates severe risks. Spontaneous migration could be both gradual and sudden. Regulated migration creates benefits for all, but if you succeed, please tell us how you made it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Daniela Bobeva, in sharing with us the Bulgarian experience. Thank you so much for Dusan, for Ivan, for sharing the Chechen experience, the Polish experience, which really kind of gives us small tidbits, small windows of different perspectives and different experiences in social integration. To wrap things up a little bit, I will introduce the context of why we're actually having this seminar. I will introduce, on behalf of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council, the fourth master plan for immigration policy focused on social integration of immigrants from the government of the Republic of Korea. Please. I have to. There is a vision, pays good lip service to the vision, a future-oriented global nation where both Korean nationals and immigrants move forward together. Very good lip service. Reality is somewhat different, but it is a good goal. The policy goals are segmented into 5: economy, safety, integration, human rights, and cooperation and infrastructure. I'll explain this. 한국말도 좀 해야 되나요? 뭐 하여튼 4차 이민 정책이 있는데 뭐 함께 사는 한국 사람들과 외국인들이 함께 사는 그런 좋은 사회를 가져가기 위한 이민 정책을 2023년에서 27년 가졌는데 그 세분화하면은 경제, 안전, 사회적 통합, 인권, 그리고 인프라 차원에서의 협력을 갖다가 얘기하고 있습니다. So the key features of the fourth master plan for immigration policy are accepting foreigners, integration and settlement, and an implementation system. Now, the first, let's say the before and after, it was kind of like a general policy, accepting foreigners, on securing labor, for integration settlement. There wasn't really any work in that area. And the implementation system was very fragmented. If you see the first to third plans, the past 15 years. But now, Korea becoming an OECD country with a lessening population, the reality is hitting the fan. We need good labor. We need to absorb properly. We need to have them happy.
in the country, whoever comes. So the fourth master plan is focused on making them members of the Korean society, enhancing diversity in foreign workers such as professional and skilled workers, and promoting integration and settlement. I would like to note that this concept of integration, they took the playbook from UK, from Germany, from France, large EU countries. But they kind of want to know what the realities are from the smaller EU countries as well, from Central and Eastern Europe as well. This is where I got the idea. And the implementation system should be comprehensive, organized, and a central local government. Even they have this little pamphlet or this poster getting civil society members, foreigners, to come and participate in improving the policies towards foreigners. So this is like an open citizen participation group that they have formed to get more direct feedback from foreigners themselves on how integration could be more effectively managed. And this is an actual poster that I've found and I'm sharing with you. So the major tasks in social integration of immigrants are to get objective indicators regarding the integration policies, to have mutual understanding and communication between Korean nationals and immigrants, and to foster the capacities of immigrants to become a member of society. All good words, of course, but at least the framework is there. And to establish a comprehensive framework for integration policies by using objective indicators, we are developing, the government is developing, an index for the integration of immigrants and establish a feedback system and create an organized framework for an integration program that connects the inflow of immigrants with integration. I'm just elaborating on those 3 points that aforementioned. So for promoting mutual understanding and communication between Korean nationals and immigrants, there increase and diversify the opportunities to communicate between Korean national and immigrants, and create an environment to facilitate cultural diversity and awareness. And the third, foster the capacities of immigrants to become a member of society, strengthen the foundation for immigrant self-sufficiency and growth, support immigrants to adapt to the basics of daily life, and provide support for the growth and development of adolescents and children with migration backgrounds. All nice sounding, but this is basically in the context of the fourth master plan, which is actually quite well defining well the areas they need to, let's say, work on, especially on social integration of immigrants. You see my pink face? I wanted to give you context of what this means. These are my friends from graduate school, the Graduate Institute of Peace Studies. And when I became a member of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council 2 years ago, and I went to Korea afterwards, I said, I want to do something meaningful as a council member of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council. Yes, I'm interested in better relations with North Korea. Yes, I'm interested in human rights of North Korea. But let's look towards the future and how we can improve Korea as a unified country, and what issues are concerning us now and what we need to be prepared for. And this, amongst a little bit of soju and beer and talking with my friends, one is an English teacher, one is an environmental activist, one is working at church, and one used to be an advisor to a politician, but now he's doing his own business. We were talking, and he said, the environmentalist said, you know, immigration is a really big problem. The population is decreasing.
we need more skilled labor in this country, and there is no answer. Maybe eventually when we reunify with North Korea, there could be some absorption, but until then, it's a very, very serious problem. And I'm like, okay, this is a good topic. So I tried in my, let's say, idealism, and proposed to the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council. But this is normally what they don't deal with as a topic. They usually deal with North Korea and things like this. So the first attempt actually was not successful in getting this seminar supported. But I continued to talk and convince our chapter and also the Central and European region that this is an important topic, and finally was convincing enough, and we proposed again, and now we're having our seminar. So I wanted to share with you this little background. So, not to just focus on, okay, we got this proposal now, we just do what we can. We do what we can. We do more than what we can. We try to really listen to what the Korean government wants. So I went directly to the Ministry of Justice, where there is this immigration policy division, and I got my friend who was a prosecutor, very high level, get me to meet the division director. And he's the division director, and he's, let's say, the assistant director. And I got to sit down and I said, okay, I'm representing the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council in Austria and Central and Eastern Europe. What can I do? And he's like, why are you here? I just got an approval for a seminar on immigration, broadly speaking, and I want to do something sharing the experiences of Central and Eastern Europe. And he said, Peaceful Unification Advisory Council doesn't normally do this. I know it doesn't normally do this. I'm taking a chance. I want to discuss something about the future of Korea, and it's been approved, so help me out. So what he said, the division director, is, we already studied UK, the United States, Germany, and France, large EU countries. But we would really like to know what the lessons learned from Central and Eastern European countries are in social integration of immigrants, and lessons learned and problems that they may have. And I said, okay, I'm doing exactly that. And this is why we're having this seminar. So I just wanted to show that there was real background work behind this. And not only this, okay, I knew that there was an important IMISCO conference in Donau University. I just happened to pass by on it. I bought a ticket to Krems. I LinkedIn first. I contacted Sabina Ertel. Okay, she's the manager of Donau Krems University, this immigration department. Proactively, let's talk over Google Talk, and I'll explain things, and you let me know. So we talk over Google, and she says, there is a conference, blah, blah, blah. I'm coming to the conference. So I buy my ticket, I go to the conference. Okay, this is how you should do things, okay? This is I'm giving you an example. I go to the conference. If you're kind of shy, I'm kind of shy. I'm not an immigration person, so I'm new, but I get to meet Albert Krahler. Those who know in the immigration community know who Albert Krahler is. He's also a very, very experienced immigration specialist, and I was able to talk to him about what I'm doing, and he got on board. And through Albert Krahler, I got to get connected to Gudrun. And then Gudrun's, let's say, got us with Daniela. Also, Dushan, through, I think through Marie Jelinkova. So it kind of the spillover effect This didn't fall from the sky. I put work in it and my heart was in it to get these people to speak because I knew their messages would be something that Korea could really learn from. Now, I wanted to give you a picture of the actual immigration situation in Korea. The lion's share is from China. We have Vietnam, United States, Philippines, Thailand, but the lion's share, like in Poland's case, the lion's share from Ukraine, the lion's share is from China. I just want to show this snapshot for you as just an illustration of the immigration situation. This is a 2021 statistic. It's relatively accurate, but I just wanted to illustrate for you that. So in that context, I wanted to get the lessons learned from Czechia, from Poland, from Bulgaria, and even from Austria, and the history behind Central and Eastern Europe. But basically, we wanted to learn the experiences from these smaller European countries and how they dealt with this problem of social integration of immigrants. And beyond the traditional topical areas in preparation of Korean unification, yes, I wanted to mention, and I already did, that for Korean unification, it is not about just better relations with North Korea. We need to be prepared as a country to have the absorption capacity, and it begins now. It begins yesterday. And so we wanted to explore, the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council wanted to explore more beyond just North Korean, South Korean issues, but issues that impact the Korean society as a whole. New ideas to build a better society of peace and welfare, and continuous efforts to build a global pivotal state. Korea is an OECD country. It's a fastly developing country. It's an advanced country, but its social policies are lagging behind, and we need to meet those global standards in order to become a good global pivotal state. Thank you and 감사합니다. I should explain this in Korean. I understand. 근데 간단하게 그냥 한번 좀 설명을 해드릴게요. 이 사회적인 통합이라는 이슈가 대학원생들 봤었죠? 제 대학원 동기입니다. 경희대 평화복지대학원 나온 친구들인데 그 친구들과 얘기하면서 뭐가 무슨 이슈가 있을까? 나 민주평통위원이 됐는데 그런 술자리에서 회식 자리에서 이민 정책에 대한 얘기가 나왔습니다. 그래서 그 이민 정책에 대한 이제 화두를 받고 그거를 가지고 와서 우리 위원들끼리 얘기하고 심지어 더 나아가서 법무부에 있는 검사님에게도 이렇게 알려서 그 이민 정책 과장님도 만나서 무엇을 중점적으로 좀 약간 좀 중동부 유럽 차원에서 좀 배울 수 있을까요? 했더니 사회적인 통합에 대한 이민자들의 사회적 통합에 대한 관심을 가지고 있다고 합니다. 특히 이민 정책과에서는 미국, 프랑스, 독일과 같은 나라, 영국과 같은 나라의 사회적 통합에 대한 이야기를 많이 공부하고 조사는 했는데 작은 이웃 국가들에 대한 경험들을 별로 모른다고 해서 저한테 그거를 그런 거 해주시면은 되게 고맙다고 말씀해 주셨어요. 그래서 이 세미나가 열게 된 배경이고요. 앞으로 우리 민주평통 차원에서도 이런 좀 미래지향적인 그런 이슈들을 통일 한국을 대비해서 좀 많이 대화 나눌 수 있고 배울 수 있는 장으로 이렇게 성장했으면 좋겠다는 개인적인 바람이 있습니다. 그걸 위해서 저도 노력할 거고요. 그래서 여러분들 귀한 시간 내주셔서 오신 거에 대해서 정말 감사드리고요. 앞으로도 뭐 우리 좀 약간 소통하면서 좋은 아이디어 있으면 서슴지 않고 우리 민주평통에 관심을 가지면서 알려주시고 소통해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다. So, in the meantime, we'll have a short break, maybe a 2 or 3 minute break. We'll rearrange some chairs so that the 4 speakers can sit down and we can entertain some questions that you may have. If you are going to direct your question in Korean, I can translate simultaneously. I mean, there is simultaneous translation, but it's only for those who have the earphones, and sometimes there's some technical difficulties, so I can do it, let's say, impromptu as we speak. In the meantime, we'll have a 2 or 3 minute break, and we will rearrange the chairs. 10분이나? 네. Okay. Thank you for returning after the break. We will open the floor to any questions that you may have. Please identify yourself and then ask the question. Yes? In the back, please identify yourself. And you can also ask or make free commentary within each other as well.
Yeah, I'm Hee-jung Yoon and I'm a student here. Just wanted to ask, like, what do you think Central and Eastern Europe and Korea have in common, so that it enables policies from Central and Eastern Europe to be adapted and modified to be to work in Korea?
Okay. Should we collect some questions or should we just answer on the...
I think that listening to my colleagues also in migration and integration policies, we are very similar. Central and Eastern Europe has less proactive policy to attract foreign labor and foreign population, more conservative countries we are. The figures at least suggest so. So what Korea could borrow from us is this is more patient, more well-argumented policy with all the impact assessments, with listening to the stakeholders also. Because stakeholders are the most proactive are the business organizations. I don't know how much my colleagues will agree with this, but for Bulgaria, they're pushing to have no borders, having everybody who wish could come and do whatever he or she wants or doesn't. So these are the business organizations, but you have on the other side the municipalities, the local authorities, and of course institutions like Ministry of Interior, to a certain extent Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for certain reasons also ministries of labor are not so much pro having foreign labor. So what you could borrow from our experience is to be more prudent and more coordination between the different interests towards migration. And to me, not to be so much positive about the impact. So we expect huge impact, but it never happens to be so huge. So small steps make the big road in this respect. So step by step in much better than gradual approach than kind of shock therapy. And so I think this is what is interesting for Central and Eastern Europe. I believe that will become different for the last 20 years, but still our policy is more conservative.
It's a good question. I think all of us tried to formulate some conclusions, but of course you cannot directly adopt what we have in our countries because your context is different. But I think there are some general patterns. I mean, you have to realize and you have to somehow reconceptualize maybe, but keep the main meaning we released. Maybe regarding the management, it's really important. Maybe really, but it's a political matter. In fact, to decide which institution will be mainly responsible for managing migration. In our country, like in Bulgaria, it's Ministry of Interior. The security aspect, that's why the security aspect is the most important, but for sure to manage labor migration, it's not good through doing it through the Ministry of Interior. The Ministry of Labor should be probably responsible for this. It means and the level of fragmentation, Daniela mentioned the fragmentation is dangerous, but on the other hand, too much power in the hand of one institution is also not good. It means to balance, to have a sort of compromise. I think this is very, very important. This is one of the aspects maybe you can learn. Institutions. Then I mentioned the stress on municipalities, micro level. It's very important. I am convinced this is really the key issue to concentrate on and to assist in integrating migrants just on the spot through municipalities. This is again quite important lesson we learned from our, I think, policies and practices. As I said, we ignored more or less this level, etc., etc. It means that going through these, formulated points, point by point, you can somehow find something relevant to your country.
Yeah, what I want to add to that is, obviously there's a lot of differences, but South Korea, like the Central European cases that we've been discussing here, they're all liberal democracies. And that implies that there's pressures towards closure, towards immigration, and there's pressures towards openness. And one of the key pressures for opening is coming from the economical side, from companies, from employers who are interested in having people fill their labor shortages. And then on the other hand, we have politics, and especially party politics, which tend to favor closure. And in Central Europe, I think this is more pronounced than in further Western Europe or Northern Europe, Scandinavia, that there is a much more conservative attitude towards immigration. And I think that applies to a certain degree also to Korea. And here, I think it's a question of how do you balance these different pressures. And I think what these cases that we've discussed here to a certain degree show is there must be a way of dealing with it. And Central Europe, more than I would say UK, Germany, France, are interested in, I would say, more of assimilation of immigrants rather than multicultural facilitation. So for example, in UK you would have whole towns where the majority population is, for example, from Pakistan, and in UK nobody has a major problem with that. And that is different, I would think, in Central Europe, where people are much more concerned with, is there too big ethnic clusters? Are people actually speaking our language? And in these regards, I think there's some similarities possibly, and also the type of civic integration courses that are promoted, for example, in Austria, or now also coming to Poland, for example. I think these are approaches which I think are interesting and relevant to Korea.
Thank you. One additional point in that context is that beyond the conventional, like France, Germany, and UK, the Central and European experience in particular is the countries from the Iron Curtain. There are former socialist countries that have been transitioned to the EU, to market economies. And in that transition, we have various important lessons to learn from the eventual unification of the two Koreas, which has a very planned economy type in the north, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, where you have a socialist economy, and a very market economy in the south, and how eventually we need to absorb these labor force and populations and integrate them properly within the overall unified Korea. So the important lessons, especially I'm so grateful from Bulgaria, from Czechia, from Poland, gives us very, very important, valuable lessons on how we can approach these problems. Not necessarily from what Central Europe can provide Korea in the just overall context, but from that important lesson of these transition economies and how they have assimilated and adapted to this problem of immigration and social integration. Okay? Okay, okay, so you need to determine, there have been several hands up. Please identify yourself and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Cedric. I'm working for the Vienna Diversity Management, and I got a question now regarding Korea, because we're talking about the absorption of North Korea. And if we make a parallel, for example, the absorption of Eastern Germany to Western Germany, and there are people who say that the absorption was maybe too early or too quick. How do you see it for Korea, for example? If, for example, in a perfect world, North Korea says, okay, we are ready, how long would it take? Is it, in your estimation, 5 years, 10 years, or should it be more quick, or what's in your estimation a possible timeline?
So you're asking for my opinion?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was 30 years old, I just sharing in jest, 30 years old, my parents, I'm the youngest child, the only son. It's like, you need to get married, right? And it's like, when's the right time to get married? There is no right time to get married, in my opinion. You first need to find a woman, I mean, let's say, or man, in this day and age. But you need to court, you need to date, you need to really get to know each other, do things together, find common denominators. It's a long process. And there can still be irreconcilable differences. So what is the question that you're asking to me is an opinion. It is my dream that in my lifetime that I will be able to travel to North Korea. Now, that just traveling doesn't mean, it can mean many things. But I think the engagement is something that needs to have already, it began more than 20 years ago when there was more democratization in the Korean Peninsula. And you may know that in June of this year, this month, actually, earlier this month, we elected a new president. And the new president wants more dialogue with North Korea. Now, this does not mean about unification. It just means about establishing peace and communication with the two Koreas. This is his intention and the position of the government. So I think if there is more dialogue, there is peace. If there is peace, we can think about the further steps. I'm not any fortune teller, but I would say that it is my dream that one day we can eventually reach that goal through small and bits and pieces of cooperation and collaboration and a sustainability of peace in place. then that dream might be able to come true. This is just my personal opinion, and anybody who wants to comment, they can. There are many other questions as well. Do you want to answer, or make a comment? Or, okay, we can have additional question.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. That was great. And I have several questions to you, mostly to Professor Drobolov, because you mentioned before that there's a Lex Ukraine, so it's a EU regulation. I think you mentioned it was from 1 to all the way
7,
up
8,
to
yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So I think it's crucial to mention the EU, the role of the EU, because it's a super international entity. So it regulates, and the EU law prevails over the national laws. So in Poland and Czechia and also in Bulgaria, how much room does the national government have for in this migrant or migration issue? And secondly, what's the attitude or the stance of these East European countries regarding this migration policy? Because if you think about it, there is a flow of migration coming all the way from the Balkan to the Western European countries. So is this the stance of the European countries, just to wait and sit out this phase that migrants go further to the Western European countries? Or do you expect that the migrants are staying in your countries permanently? Thank you.
Thank you. There are several issues or several questions or sub-questions. First of all, as Ivan, I think, indicated, the directive, EU directive from 2001, gives some basic standards, and it's temporary protection, and you have to provide these temporary refugees with basic assistance regarding health services, labor market, social security, etc., etc. It's done, but it's up to individual states how they concretely or specifically regulate this. You mentioned Lex Ukraine, number 1 until 8, are specific laws regulating this in the Czech perspective, through the Czech perspective, in fact. And I must say, these laws slowly, step by step, give less and less support, because they expect that over time refugees will become more self-sufficient at the labor market, and they will be able to earn money and support themselves. It means this is the logics behind the Lex Ukraine. The problem is, and we didn't mention it, by the way, the possible return of refugees back to, repatriation or voluntary returns back to Ukraine. By the way, we don't know political, negotiations between Ukraine and the European Union governments, because President Zelensky clearly proclaimed, we have many or all Ukrainians back to Ukraine after it is possible. Okay, it means that's a problem. Of course, there are many studies trying to evaluate whether 50, 40, 30% will go back home. It's very difficult. We concentrated on this problem, and it's a dynamic. It depends on what's going on in Ukraine. It depends on their integration, on their children. By the way, many factors are important. By the way, we found out that probably more important are factors related to Ukraine rather than in Czechia. That it was one of our findings. That's why I am saying, I want to say, it's a problem to regulate the population, which really, and the problem is that also they don't know. They don't know what will be the result of their decisions. It means very often they still don't know whether they want to settle or not. It means that that's the problem. Your second question was about
the stance of your country towards this.
And again, Daniel, I think Ivan mentioned it. There is a very different attitude towards people coming from Africa, or not only from Africa, but from Asia or from Middle East, through, by the way, Eastern Europe and Central Europe to Western Europe. Czechia is one of the countries which is very anti-immigrant. We don't, or the population of Czechia don't like this migration, despite the fact that minimum of them will ask for a refugee status in our country and will stay, in fact, in our country. But generally, it's very anti-immigration position in this regard. But as I said, it's a different story with Ukrainians, where first of all, aggressor is it's quite clear that Russia is aggressor. And also there is a very, as I mentioned, very positive experience of Ukrainians, because they are good workers, they are good fathers of their families, by the way. Men started coming and they sent remittances back home. It means, and they have a good reputation in our country. It means their position is totally different as compared to so-called illegal flows of migrants or refugees coming from Africa, from Asia, and from the Middle East.
Just short comment,
Sure,
very
yeah.
short. You know that migration policy is a very hot topic and very delicate topic within the European Union. So we have, as Dusan said, basic requirements, but behind those there are new and new coming up as decisions, qui communautaire of any kind. But the countries have enough freedom to decide upon their migration tools, particularly for integration and some other things. We are fully free in this area. But within this freedom, it depends very much on the financing, as much as you have. But as regards the Ukrainians, what we experience is a huge number of them remain and will remain forever. They buy properties. The prices of real estate in some of the areas where they are concentrated are jumping. I'm teaching in one of those regions, and I have in the second grade, among 200 students, I have at least 20 Ukrainians I'm teaching. And they cope with the Bulgarian language quite easily. 2 years, I think it's not so long period of time. So they are coming, they are here to stay. And the others are those who come, work during the summer and go back. We still have no one-way tickets from them. They migrate very often.
Yes, we need to wrap things up, so we maybe take 2-3 questions, and then 2 questions, 3 questions, 3 questions. So yes, please, person with the microphone.
Hello, I'm Sangi, and I'm also a member of this council, and I work professionally for the art sector in Vienna. So my question is, we talked a lot about the economic aspects, and I would like to question about the cultural aspect. And Central Western Europe experienced a lot of cultural clashes and difference. And in Korea particularly, we have historically experienced very homogenic unity, and we're kind of proud of this. And then I can imagine that might be a problem that when we get a lot of immigrants, that there will be cultural differences and hurdles that we have to overcome. And what do you think, what efforts could Korean Ministry of Art undertake to overcome this problem?
Can we entertain the other questions and then maybe all together?
So first of all, I would like to thank all the panels for sharing fruitful insights, and also to Hosung and Minju Pyeongtong for organizing this event. My name is Da-hee, and I'm a student studying anthropology in Vienna. And my question goes to all panels. So in my opinion, even when migrants earn an equal and legal status, it doesn't always guarantee the true belonging and recognition inside the society. So from your experience, maybe beyond language proficiency or employment status, and what factors actually make someone truly to be counted as a member of the society, and in what extent do you think this kind of a identificational integration is ensured in Czech Republic and Poland and Bulgaria? And the reason why I'm asking is I've already seen many North Korean escapees in Korea speaking the same language as we do, and they work as we do, but I think their voices are not heard as much as the native residents. So I would like to have some takeaways and maybe connect to Korean society after the reunification. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Prokop, and I'm from the States, but my husband and I started a church here many years ago. It's an international church, and so we have a lot of immigrants. We have many people from the Middle East, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, as well as Ukrainians. And my question goes along with the others. There was almost like a welcoming of the Ukrainians to Austria. They received free passes on the trains and free parking, for their cars, and some of the refugees in our church were quite shocked at the difference in the treatment between the Middle Eastern immigrants wanting to have asylum here and the Ukrainians. We know some of those places are also war-torn. Is it a cultural thing? Is it a religious thing? And how can South Korea prepare themselves to exactly what she said, to have a different paradigm towards the people coming in who are culturally different, even though they have the same language? How can they be prepared to receive them as one of their own?
So we click now, that's all.
There's one more question.
I think the last you have? I think it will be the last.
Hello, my name is Kim. I'm not good speaking English well, but I want to ask you. Thank you for your presentation. So I have one question. In your countries, this social integration of the immigrants police respect the cultural background of this immigrant, or do they push them to assimilate?
All right, I'll try to be a little bit selective because there was a lot of questions, but I might start with this one, the difference between Ukrainians and other refugees in Austria here, but also in other parts of Europe. I think this is very much also a result of we have this temporary protection directive, and that has worked completely different than the classical asylum system through which Syrians, Afghans, etc. came. It was a lot less politicized. Migration, asylum was a lot less politicized due to the fact that people just arrived, they had a status, they had access to the labor market. Meanwhile, asylum seekers have to go through an individual asylum procedure. And there is this public discourse of who is a genuine refugee, who is not a genuine refugee. And that is also anchored in this legal, political structures. That's the first thing. But then, of course, there is also the question more broadly of culture. And here there is certainly, I would say, a much more favorable public attitudes towards Ukrainians as opposed to Syrians or Afghans, for example. It's also tied, I think, to the demographics of Ukrainians mainly being women, whereas other types of migration mainly being young men. That said, I would also like to point out that in 2015 and 16 in Austria there was a massive solidarity wave for Syrian Afghan refugees, and the public attitudes have completely shifted at some point. And that has had several reasons, but I think it's really important to, in every kind of migration, refugee wave, there is always this peak of solidarity early on, and you have to kind of make use of that and kind of try to institutionalize structures created by civil society, NGOs, etc. Then the other question was related to when is somebody truly part of society, and it's not just a question of being a working person, having found a house, but also engaging socially with people and having inter-ethnic contacts, etc. And that's, I think, not an easy thing to achieve. I have no immediate or simple answer to that, but I do think that, again, it really ties back to making use of solidarity networks that emerge early on in the migration wave. And to use them as catalysts. And then lastly, the question of culture. I think, yeah, even in a socioculturally conservative country like Korea, you must accept the fact that there will be some ethnic cultural diversity to a certain degree. And it's always a question of what are the key values that you are asking from people to accept, from newcomers to accept, and which kind of values are you okay with being different. And here you can look into the constitution of Korea, some would look into religion, but like what are the core values that you want to, communicate in the course of civic integration programs. And even that is something that you can communicate, but for that to be lived, takes a lot of time, and I guess it's just something that you have to accept a certain level of diversity and multiculturalism, I assume, yeah.
Thank you. There were many aspects in these questions. Very briefly, as I spoke about anti-immigrant Czech population, it's not true, because one half is very pro-immigrant and one half is even more against immigration. Our society is very polarized. Second, the question regarding the status or what factors, I think very important is to stabilize the migrant through very clear status which enables to integrate into society, into labor market, and it's a permanent residence status. It means really to appreciate that the immigrant is here through this pretty stable status. It's very important for those migrants and for the society, and you can do whatever. There are some limitations, but you have the same rights almost as the citizen of the country. Diversity. What is very important, I think, is to realize that Czech population is quite interesting, because we Ukrainians, it's a Slavic nation with similar culture. By the way, the Zakarpattian region was part of Czechoslovakia. We have special relations because a part of Ukraine was a part of Czechoslovakia between the wars. But back to diversity, we have almost 70,000 Vietnamese in our country. Very different culture, and they were in a very difficult position in the very beginning. But just now, they are very popular, they are accepted. They are second generation. You cannot recognize, if you hear a Czech language, you cannot recognize whether it's a foreigner or former foreigner or Czech. They are very successful. They finished university education. They are pretty well integrated, and the nation feels it and accepts it and appreciates it. Accepts it and appreciates it. It means they are very popular as compared to where they were 30 years ago. It means Vietnamese are really, because they are self-sufficient, they are able to, they are really doing well in the society, and it's visible. It means the important point is that you can see it, and if you don't see it, you have to, in the very beginning, you have to, as I stressed, you have to inform objectively about the process, migration, integration, about advantages and disadvantages. The worst is if you only stress advantages and you will not speak about disadvantages. That's the problem. It means this is quite important, objective information. Sorry, the last point. We are in fact unified. Ivan mentioned several times civic integration, but there is a civic integration model just now for integration. You know, pluralist or multicultural model failed. Assimilationist model failed. And the exclusionist model failed. All these three models, they had in the past very serious problems. Just now we are searching for something new, and we speak about civic integration model, which is a sort of hybrid between assimilationist and multicultural. And Czechia followed this model. Poland has been following this model. Germany, by the way, France, to some extent or to a large extent, all these countries switched to following and did this model. It means we are somehow unified just now through trying whether this model will be more successful than three classical ones.
We are successful in integrating our minorities. We have Turkish minority, which has nothing to do with our language, nothing to do with the culture, religion, etc. We started with these big queues in the beginning of 90s. I could say that Turkish minority is fully integrated. They're everywhere, in the top, in the parliament, in the top, in the government, in the universities. They're everywhere. Same to a certain extent with gypsies. We have 7% gypsies. Some of them do not recognize as gypsies but as Bulgarians. So we are a good example of integrating, not assimilating. They keep their culture, their mosques, everything, but they are fully integrated. But this is not enough in order to accept new. So there is an absorption capacity of society, I think. So that's why we are more prudent, because we know how long is this path to integrate the people, keeping their culture, but at the same time to be felt by the rest of the society quite well. I disagree with my colleagues concerning Ukrainians and why we are more nice with them. It's nothing to do with the directive in my view. It is related with our past. We are post-socialist countries which were with Russia, and we split. We said we don't want to go anymore with you, and now what happened? Russia showed its face, and we feel Ukrainians like real victims of Russia. So you should look for the past, not so much culture and religion, but we felt obliged to help these people because they are really victim. While for some others, for example, Afghanis, you never know who is the victim, how it happens, who is the aggressor. So you know, it's more here. It is so clear, and it is painful for us. What Russia did is a crime.
Maybe one more sentence. Also, when having this flow from Africa, it's mixed flow, and we know that unfortunately, some so-called refugees misused this status, and they are in fact a sort of mass labor migrants. You know? That's true. And this is maybe also behind some opinions.
Well, thank you very much. The intention behind this seminar was to learn something that eventually could contribute to an eventual unification of Korea. But even currently, as we speak, Korea is a vastly developed country and we need good labor force and assimilation and multiculturalism, a hybrid form that we can socially integrate immigrants to the Republic of Korea and eventually to the unification of Korea eventually. I hope you agree with me that this was an interesting attempt at discussing very important lessons learned from Bulgaria, from Czechia, from Poland, and we miss Gudrun Biffle dearly. Hopefully we can get an opportunity to listen to her one day. But I'm so grateful to Daniela Bobeva, Dusan Drobolev, and Ivan Josipovich, as well as the Embassy of the Republic of Korea, who is supporting our efforts with the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council and the Korea Cultural Center here for providing this space. Now we can go and do more questions and answers upstairs with Korean hors d'oeuvres, kimbap, and snacks and drinks. Thank you so much.